The world had been watching the skies for years, listening for something, anything that would suggest we were not alone. And then, finally, the signals came. They were faint at first, almost like whispers among the static of space. Scientists in observatories around the world noticed strange patterns in the signals, patterns that did not match any natural phenomena known to humanity. At first, people argued over their meaning. Were they echoes of distant stars, cosmic interference, or something far more mysterious, far more deliberate? A global coalition of space agencies quickly formed a plan. They would send a mission to investigate, to trace the signals back to their origin, and, if possible, make contact. The stakes were immense. No one knew what lay ahead in the depths of the solar system, but humanity had always been driven by curiosity, by the need to explore the unknown. A crew was selected, each member highly trained in their field. Engineers who could repair almost anything, pilots who could navigate the most dangerous conditions, scientists who could analyze even the most puzzling phenomena. Each one had spent years preparing for this moment, dreaming of the chance to be part of something bigger than themselves. The crew gathered in the launch facility, a massive structure of metal and glass that seemed to hum with energy and purpose. The day of the launch was tense. Families waved, some with tears in their eyes, as the astronauts stepped into the shuttle. There was excitement, of course, but also fear. The unknown is not easily faced, and space holds dangers that can kill in an instant. But the crew was determined, driven by the possibility of discovery. Inside the shuttle, the atmosphere was a mixture of quiet focus and nervous energy. Each crew member went through final checks, calibrating instruments, confirming communication channels, and reviewing protocols for any emergency that might arise. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering, built to withstand the vacuum of space and the unpredictable conditions they might encounter. Its hull glinted under the bright lights of the launch bay, ready to carry them beyond the safety of Earth. As the countdown began, the crew felt a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. Seconds ticked by, each one heavier than the last. Then, with a roar that shook the launch pad and rattled the hearts of those watching from afar, the shuttle lifted off. The crew pressed back into their seats as Earth slowly receded beneath them. Cities, mountains, oceans, all shrinking into a distant, fragile sphere. For the first time, they saw Earth as a whole, a tiny blue world in the vast blackness of space. The beauty was overwhelming, but so was the awareness of how small and vulnerable they were. The journey through the inner solar system was a time of routine and preparation. The crew established patterns, shifts for monitoring instruments, exercises to keep their bodies healthy, moments to rest and reflect. Yet even in these ordinary routines, there were signs that this mission would not be ordinary. Instruments occasionally picked up strange readings, brief, unexplainable energy bursts, magnetic fluctuations that did not match any known planetary activity. The crew noted these occurrences, but nothing yet seemed dangerous. As they approached the orbit of Mars, the signals grew stronger. The whispers of energy that had first been noticed from Earth now seemed almost like voices calling out across the void. The crew studied them carefully, trying to find meaning, trying to understand the patterns. Some suggested they might be artificial, a message from something intelligent. Others urged caution, warning that curiosity could be dangerous. No one could ignore the tension that had begun to settle over the ship. A quiet fear that something beyond human comprehension awaited them. The interpersonal dynamics among the crew became more pronounced as the isolation of space set in. Long hours in tight quarters amplified every emotion. There were moments of laughter, brief escapes from the pressure, but also arguments and disagreements. Some felt the others were too cautious, while others worried about recklessness. Despite these tensions, there was also a deep bond forming. They were united by purpose, and by the knowledge that their survival depended not just on skill, but on trust. One evening, as the shuttle passed beyond the orbit of the moon, the crew gathered in the observation deck. The Earth hung in the black sky like a fragile jewel. Silence filled the room as they each stared at their home planet, thinking of the millions of people waiting for news, of the lives they had left behind, of the uncertain future. A sense of responsibility settled over them. They were no longer just explorers. They were ambassadors for all of humanity, venturing into a realm that no one else could reach. The first major anomaly occurred near the asteroid belt. The ship's instruments detected a series of gravitational distortions that did not correspond to any known object. Rocks and debris seemed to move in patterns that defied logic, almost as if guided by an unseen hand. The crew was both fascinated and uneasy. The engineers tried to adjust their sensors, recalibrate their instruments, but the readings only became stranger. Every explanation seemed insufficient. Some speculated it was a natural phenomenon. Some whispered about something intelligent. Sleep became a rare commodity. The crew took turns monitoring the anomalies, reviewing data, and making calculations for navigation. Stress began to creep in, subtle at first, but growing heavier with each passing day. Even the most experienced members could not shake the sense that they were venturing into territory where humanity had no map, no guide. And yet, despite the fear, curiosity drove them forward. The signals were stronger now, and turning back was not an option. The first approach to the inner planets brought its own challenges. Radiation levels fluctuated unpredictably. Micrometeoroid streams posed constant threats. Navigation systems occasionally flickered under unknown interference. Each obstacle reminded the crew that space was not forgiving, that even the smallest error could be catastrophic. Yet every problem solved was a small victory, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. Weeks into the mission, communication with Earth became intermittent. Signals slowed, messages delayed, sometimes failing to reach home at all. The crew began to feel the isolation acutely. They were alone in a vast, indifferent universe, with only each other for company. In this environment, every word, every gesture, every shared moment became significant. Bonds strengthened. Arguments sometimes erupted, but so did acts of quiet heroism repairing a sensor in freezing conditions. Helping a crew member cope with anxiety, sharing a moment of wonder as a comet streaked across the darkness. By the time the shuttle approached Jupiter's orbit, the crew had become a tight-knit unit, united by purpose, skill, and the shared experience of facing the unknown. The signals continued to pulse, strange and beautiful, an invitation or a warning they could not tell. And yet, despite the unease, hope remained. Hope that what they would find would bring knowledge, perhaps even proof that humanity was not alone. Hope that their journey would inspire those watching from below. Hope that, despite the risks, the mission would succeed. And so, with Earth far behind them and the mysterious signals growing stronger, the crew prepared to enter the heart of the Sol system. They were explorers in every sense, carrying the weight of human curiosity and the fragility of life into the dark expanse beyond the familiar planets. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, each heartbeat echoing in the silence of space, each breath a testament to humanity's relentless drive to seek the unknown. The journey had just begun, but already it was clear that nothing would be simple, nothing would be ordinary. Space had a way of challenging every expectation, and the crew could feel it in the tension that hung over every decision, every observation, every moment of silence. The unknown awaited, and the whispers of the signals seemed to promise that what lay ahead would change everything if they survived to tell the tale. The voyage deeper into the Sol system felt endless. Days bled into nights, though in space there was no real night, just the unchanging blackness dotted with distant stars. The crew kept a strict schedule to maintain their sanity. Shifts rotated every few hours, with each member taking turns monitoring instruments, logging data, running simulations, or performing routine maintenance. Every task seemed small compared to the vast emptiness surrounding them, yet every task mattered. One mistake could mean disaster. The strange signals they had been following seemed to grow more persistent. At first, they had been faint, almost like whispers in the cosmic wind. Now they pulsed with rhythm, almost deliberate, but still unrecognizable. The scientists debated endlessly over their meaning. Was it some natural cosmic phenomenon, a strange form of radiation, or something truly intelligent trying to communicate? Every attempt to interpret the signals seemed to raise more questions than answers. Life aboard the shuttle was isolating. The crew could see each other every day, but there was little to break the monotony. They shared meals that were tasteless but functional, recycled air and water, and the constant hum of machinery that was both comforting and unnerving. The small living quarters amplified every sound: footsteps, coughing, the faint creak of the ship adjusting to movement. Personal space was a luxury that did not exist. Arguments were inevitable, but so were moments of camaraderie, quiet jokes, shared stories of home, or simple conversations about dreams and fears. One day, while scanning the space between Mars and Jupiter, the crew noticed something unusual. Their instruments detected objects moving in a way that defied natural physics. Large rocks and debris seemed to shift on their own, moving with intent rather than the predictable patterns of gravity. The engineers ran diagnostic tests to ensure it wasn't a malfunction, but everything on the ship worked perfectly. The scientists theorized, could this be the first tangible sign of an advanced presence in the Sol system? The crew watched, fascinated and apprehensive, as the objects slowly aligned in patterns that seemed deliberate, almost like a message or a warning. Tension began to grow among the crew. Isolation in space has a way of amplifying fear, and uncertainty only makes it worse. Some members began speaking less, avoiding eye contact, lost in thought. Others were more vocal, trying to convince themselves and the others that everything was under control, that fear would only make them careless. The pilots spent long hours in the control room, plotting courses, making sure they were prepared for any obstacle. The engineers worked tirelessly, checking every system, calibrating every instrument. The scientists analyzed every signal, every anomaly, hoping for a breakthrough. Sleep became a precious commodity. Some crew members slept in short bursts, while others struggled to rest at all. Dreams became vivid and sometimes disturbing, reflections of the deep anxiety that had settled over the ship. Even in their dreams, the signals seemed to follow them, strange rhythms that pulsed through the mind, impossible to ignore. When they awoke, the same questions hung over them. Was this a trap? Was something waiting for them further into the Sol system? Or were they simply witnessing natural phenomena beyond human understanding? The first real crisis came when they entered the outer asteroid belt. The ship's sensors detected a sudden surge of energy. The crew scrambled to adjust their shields and trajectory, but the readings were erratic. Debris shifted unpredictably, as if guided by some unseen force. The pilots maneuvered skillfully, avoiding collisions, but the tension in the control room was palpable. Every member of the crew felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Even the most experienced astronauts had no precedent for what they were experiencing. During the crisis, moments of human connection shone through. One crew member, noticing a colleague trembling from fear, reached out a hand and offered quiet reassurance. Another took a short break to prepare a warm meal, a small gesture that reminded everyone of home. Even amid chaos, humanity persisted. These moments became the glue holding the crew together, keeping fear from consuming them entirely. The strange phenomena did not stop at the asteroid belt. As they approached the orbit of Jupiter, the ship began to pick up electromagnetic pulses that interfered with communications. The crew tried repeatedly to send updates to Earth, but the messages were garbled, sometimes not sending at all. The isolation grew heavier. Earth felt farther away than ever, a distant blue dot unable to reach them in their time of need. The crew relied on each other entirely, trusting not just skill, but judgment, instincts, and a quiet understanding that survival depended on unity. One night, during a rare moment of calm, the crew gathered in the observation deck. Jupiter loomed large in the viewport, swirling clouds of gas and storms larger than anything on Earth. They were awed by the beauty, but also reminded of how small they truly were. Silence fell over the group as they each contemplated the vastness around them. Conversations became softer, words careful and deliberate. Some reflected on their lives back home, thinking of the families, friends, and people they might never see again. Others thought of humanity as a whole, the species that had dared to reach for the stars, despite the dangers. Gradually, the signals seemed to take on a structure. Patterns emerged, subtle but undeniable. The scientists tried mapping them, looking for repetitions, symmetries, or signs of intentional design. Days turned into weeks as they analyzed the data, each breakthrough raising more questions than it answered. Was this communication, or was it a natural pattern they did not yet understand? The ambiguity was maddening, but the crew pressed on. Curiosity, after all, had brought them here, and it would not let them turn back. Strange occurrences began to affect their daily routines. Instruments sometimes acted erratically, recording data that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Lights flickered without cause, and equipment occasionally failed for no apparent reason. Some crew members whispered about the possibility of an external presence observing them, though none dared speak too loudly. Fear was no longer subtle. It had settled in as a constant companion, shaping their thoughts and actions. Yet, even with fear looming, the crew remained focused on the mission. Each member had been trained for uncertainty, and now they relied on that training more than ever. Interpersonal tensions flared. Confined in tight quarters with constant stress, small disagreements became heated arguments. One member questioned the decision-making of another, while another feared that panic might lead to disaster. The captain had to step in multiple times, reminding everyone of their shared purpose and the importance of unity. Despite disagreements, moments of cooperation shone through. Crew members helped each other with repairs, shared insights on data interpretation, and offered comfort when anxiety threatened to overwhelm. Human connection, they realized, was as essential as technology in the cold vastness of space. The closer they moved to the inner planets, the stronger the signals became. They seemed to emanate from a direction beyond Mars, but no one could locate the exact source. The data was tantalizing, almost within reach, but constantly shifting. Every attempt to pinpoint it led to frustration, yet also wonder. The crew began speculating, imagining possibilities that ranged from alien civilizations to phenomena that defied known science. Some members wrote notes, sketches, or journal entries, recording their thoughts and observations in the hope that future generations might understand what they had witnessed as they passed the orbit of Mars. A small object appeared on their radar. It was unlike anything they had seen, a fragment or craft that seemed too structured to be natural. The crew watched cautiously, analyzing every angle. It rotated slowly, reflecting the light of the sun, and for a moment there was awe. They were witnessing something truly unknown, a glimpse of something beyond Earth, beyond human understanding. Excitement and fear intertwined, creating a tension that would not be easily resolved. The mission had shifted from exploration to a delicate balance of survival and understanding. Every decision carried weight. Every observation might hold the key to unraveling the mystery, and every moment brought them closer to a truth that could change everything. They were explorers in the truest sense, venturing into a part of the solar system that no human had ever reached. And with each passing day, the sense of isolation deepened, reminding them that once they moved further, there might be no turning back. The day ended with the crew gathered in quiet reflection. Earth was a tiny blue speck far behind them, the signals pulsing faintly ahead, and the vast unknown stretching in all directions. Fear, wonder, hope, and determination mingled together. They had come so far, and yet the greatest challenges were still ahead. The journey had already changed them, revealing strengths and vulnerabilities they had never known existed. They were no longer just a crew. They were witnesses to something immense, something that defied explanation, and something that demanded courage beyond ordinary human limits. As the shuttle drifted through the darkness, moving closer to the heart of the signals, the crew braced themselves. What awaited them in the depths of the Sol system was unknown. They could feel it in the strange readings, the shifting objects, the unrelenting hum of the ship's instruments. And yet, despite everything, they moved forward. Curiosity drove. By the time the shuttle reached the outer regions beyond Mars, the atmosphere inside had shifted. The crew was no longer just curious. They were alert, cautious, and aware that every move might matter. The signals had grown stronger, clearer, but also more mysterious. It was as if they were being guided, teased, and watched all at the same time. There was no proof of life, no visible structure, nothing tangible, yet the instruments suggested something far beyond human comprehension. One morning, during a routine scan of the area, the sensors picked up an unusual reading. Something massive, almost like a ship or structure, appeared among the scattered asteroids. At first, they thought it was a misread, a glitch in the instruments. The engineers triple-checked the data, ran simulations, and recalibrated sensors. But every reading pointed to the same conclusion. Something was there. It was enormous, irregular in shape, and moving slightly, though not in a way consistent with natural celestial objects. The crew gathered in the observation deck, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the control panels. Through the reinforced viewport, they saw the object drifting silently, partially obscured by asteroid fragments. It looked alien not in the sense of imagination, but in the sense of being entirely unrecognizable. No human-made ship or probe could match its scale or design. Some members held their breath, hesitant to speak. Others whispered theories, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Was it a derelict vessel? A probe? Or a structure built intentionally for some purpose they could not yet understand? The captain decided they would approach cautiously, keeping a safe distance. Maneuvering through the asteroid field was challenging, requiring every ounce of the pilot's skill. Debris shifted unpredictably, as though some invisible force was guiding it. The shuttle's instruments picked up energy readings that pulsed in rhythm with the signals they had been tracking. It was almost as if the object and the signals were connected, two parts of a whole that humans had yet to decipher. As they got closer, a strange phenomenon occurred. Small lights, barely visible, flickered across the surface of the object. They weren't random. They followed patterns, moving in sequences that suggested intelligence. The crew watched, mesmerized and fearful. The scientists speculated quietly about the possibility of communication. Perhaps this was a message, a signal encoded in light and energy. Perhaps it was a warning, or perhaps it was something entirely beyond their understanding. Attempts to communicate with Earth were met with silence. The distance and the interference from the signals made it nearly impossible to send coherent messages. The crew realized they were alone, truly alone, in a part of the Sol system that no human had ever explored. The isolation weighed heavily on them. They could not call for help, could not consult experts, could not turn back without abandoning the very mission that had brought them here. The first close encounter brought both awe and fear. As the shuttle drifted near the object, one of the engineers noticed subtle movements in the shadows. Small panels shifted, surfaces adjusted, as if the object were alive. Lights flickered in response to the shuttle's approach. The crew exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and unease. Every instinct warned them to be careful. Yet curiosity, the same force that had carried them across millions of kilometers, pushed them forward. They decided to attempt a visual scan. The cameras captured details that instruments alone could not detect. Intricate geometric patterns etched across surfaces, sections that seemed hollow but perfectly symmetrical, and textures that suggested materials unknown to Earth. The scientists debated whether it was a machine, a ship, or a habitat. The object appeared functional, maintained, and intelligent in its design. Yet no life signs were detected, at least not in any form the shuttle could recognize. Hours passed as they observed, documented, and analyzed. The tension grew with every passing moment. Fear was no longer a background feeling. It was a tangible presence in the ship. Crew members spoke in hushed tones, careful not to startle one another. Every sound, every movement, every flicker of a panel seemed magnified in the enclosed space. They were explorers, but also intruders, venturing into a domain that did not welcome them. Then something unexpected happened. A pulse of energy radiated from the object. It was sudden, brief, and intense, enough to cause the shuttle to shudder slightly. Instruments went haywire for a few seconds, displaying data that made no sense. The engineers worked quickly to stabilize systems, but even as they did, a sense of unease settled over the crew. Whatever they were encountering was not passive. It was aware. And they were inside its domain. The captain called a meeting in the control room. They had to decide: approach further, attempt to investigate directly, or retreat to a safer distance and continue remote observations. Opinions were divided. Some wanted to push forward, to seize the opportunity of a lifetime. Others argued for caution, emphasizing the unknown dangers. In the end, the decision was a compromise. They would hover at a safe distance, observing, documenting, and gathering data while remaining ready to retreat at a moment's notice. Over the next several days, the crew continued their careful study. Patterns in the object's lights seemed to repeat, almost like a language. The scientists theorized, debated, and hypothesized. Perhaps the signals were a form of mathematical communication, a code waiting to be understood. Perhaps it was a test designed to gauge the intelligence or intentions of anyone who approached. The crew logged every detail, creating a meticulous record for Earth, though they knew it might take decades for anyone to fully understand what they were witnessing. Life inside the shuttle remained tense. The constant observation, the isolation, the unpredictability of the object, it all created stress. Crew members took turns trying to relax, exercise, or simply rest. Yet the fear lingered, subtle but pervasive. Dreams were restless, sometimes filled with visions of the object, of patterns and lights that refused to make sense. The mind, starved of normal stimuli, created its own fears and stories. The crew reminded each other of reality, of science, of data, but even they could not completely silence the growing unease. Small incidents began to occur. Lights flickered inside the shuttle. Instruments registered brief spikes in energy, and objects shifted ever so slightly. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to unsettle the crew. The engineers double-checked every system. The pilots recalculated trajectories, and the scientists analyzed every data spike. Yet the source of these anomalies remained a mystery. Were they caused by the object, the signals, or something else entirely? Each possibility was more unsettling than the last. One evening, as the shuttle drifted silently in the shadow of the object, the crew gathered for a shared observation. The object's lights flickered rhythmically, casting strange reflections across the viewport. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the soft hum of the shuttle's systems. Each crew member stared, captivated, and anxious. It was a moment of connection, not just with the unknown object, but with each other. They were explorers on the edge of discovery, facing something that could redefine humanity's understanding of the universe. The first real encounter with the unknown changed the crew. They were no longer merely following signals. They were interacting with something intelligent, mysterious, and potentially dangerous. The awe and excitement of discovery were tempered by fear and responsibility. Every decision carried weight. Every observation mattered. They had crossed a line from exploration into the realm of first contact. Despite the uncertainty, the crew pressed on. They mapped the object, documented its patterns, and recorded every anomaly. They took samples of particles in the surrounding space, hoping for clues about its origin. They debated theories of communication, trying to decipher the meaning behind the lights and energy pulses. Every day brought new questions, new fears, and new glimpses of something beyond comprehension. And yet, amid the fear and tension, human curiosity endured. The crew reminded themselves why they were there: to explore, to discover, and to expand humanity's knowledge. They documented everything meticulously, knowing that even if they did not survive, their observations could guide future explorers. In those moments, they were connected not just to each other, but to the countless generations of humans who had dreamed of reaching for the star's dot as the shuttle continued its careful study. The crew could not shake the feeling that the object was watching, responding, perhaps even understanding their presence. The lights, the energy pulses, the subtle movements all hinted at intelligence far beyond their own. Fear and fascination intertwined, driving them forward while caution pulled them back. They were explorers in every sense, facing a truth that challenged every expectation and every understanding they had of the universe. The object remained silent, enigmatic, and imposing. It was both a marvel and a warning, a mystery that demanded attention and respect. The crew had entered uncharted territory, and there was no turning back. Whatever lay ahead, they would confront it together, armed with skill, courage, and the enduring human spirit. They were witnesses to something extraordinary, something that might never be fully understood, yet something that could change humanity forever. By the time the shuttle had lingered near the massive, mysterious object, the atmosphere inside had changed dramatically. Fear, which had once been a quiet companion, now hovered like a shadow over every activity. The crew had grown tense, alert. To every sound, every flicker of light, every anomaly on their instruments. They were no longer simply explorers. They were intruders in a space that did not belong to them, and they could feel it. The first disappearance occurred quietly, almost without warning. During a routine check of the outer sensors, one of the crew members failed to return to the observation deck after their shift. Initially, the others assumed the crew member had gone to rest or was checking instruments elsewhere. But as minutes turned to hours, concern grew. Calls over the intercom went unanswered. Cameras showed empty corridors. Panic began to creep in. The captain ordered a full system scan, searching for any sign of life, any clue as to where the missing crew member might be. There was nothing. No signal, no trace, no explanation. The shock hit hard. The crew had trained for emergencies, for accidents, for equipment failure, but never for something like this. The idea that one of them could simply vanish without a trace was terrifying. Every system was checked repeatedly, every possible scenario considered, yet nothing made sense. The missing crew member's absence remained a mystery, an invisible threat that turned every moment into a question. Could it happen again? Could it happen to any of them next? The remaining crew members tried to maintain routines, but the tension was palpable. Meals were eaten in silence. Work was performed with meticulous care. Shifts were extended to ensure that someone was always monitoring the missing crew member's last known location, scanning instruments, and checking every reading. Fear had a way of sharpening senses, but it also frayed nerves. Arguments became more frequent, frustration mounting as the impossibility of their situation sank in dot as days passed. More anomalies occurred. Lights flickered at odd intervals. Panels moved slightly on their own, and instruments recorded data that seemed impossible. The ship itself, once a source of comfort and security, now felt alien. Every hum, every vibration, every creak of metal was magnified by fear and a sense of isolation. Crew members began whispering about unseen forces, though no one dared say it out loud. The idea that the object or something associated with it could be responsible became impossible to ignore. About another disappearance followed, more sudden than the first. A crew member was in the lab, analyzing samples collected near the object, when a faint alarm sounded. By the time the others arrived, the space was empty. The samples remained untouched, the instruments still running, but the person was gone. Panic spread like wildfire. The remaining crew realized they could not account for each other, even in their own ship. Trust became both crucial and fragile. The psychological impact was profound. Sleep became nearly impossible. Dreams were filled with impossible scenarios, strange lights, and voices that seemed to call from nowhere. Anxiety and paranoia grew. Crew members started taking shifts not only to perform work, but to watch each other, to ensure that no one vanished without warning. Yet even with constant vigilance, the disappearances continued. There was no pattern, no warning, no logic to them. Each incident was a reminder of how vulnerable they truly were. The captain tried to maintain order and focus. Meetings were held to discuss the situation, protocols reviewed, and contingency plans updated. But even with leadership, fear could not be fully controlled. The crew's nerves were frayed. Small mistakes became more dangerous, and tensions flared into arguments over decisions and actions. Yet moments of cooperation persisted. When repairs were needed, crew members put aside fear and worked together, demonstrating that even in extreme stress, humanity's capacity for teamwork could endure. During one particularly tense day, the crew attempted to analyze the object more closely. Energy pulses from it seemed to respond to their proximity. Lights on the surface shifted in complex patterns, almost as if it were aware of them. The sense of being watched was no longer a subtle feeling. It was overwhelming. Every observation seemed to trigger a response. The crew began theorizing that the disappearances were connected, perhaps a warning or a defensive mechanism. Every approach had to be calculated carefully, every movement deliberate. The psychological strain affected communication. Crew members who had been confident and assertive now questioned their every action. Some became withdrawn, refusing to leave their quarters unless necessary. Others became hypervigilant, inspecting every detail obsessively. In some ways, the crew had become both more cautious and more fearful, caught in a balance between curiosity and survival instinct. They knew that retreat might be safer, yet the drive to understand the object and the signals pushed them forward, not to maintain morale. The captain organized small, deliberate moments of human connection. Shared meals, brief conversations, and attempts at humor became tools for survival as much as scientific work. These moments reminded the crew that they were not alone in spirit, even as physical disappearances continued to threaten them. Bonds between remaining members strengthened, though the weight of fear was never far behind. The pattern of disappearances and anomalies continued. At one point, 2 crew members vanished simultaneously while performing a routine inspection outside the main observation area. Sensors showed no unusual activity, no warning, nothing to explain how 2 people could disappear in a controlled, monitored environment. The crew could only speculate, and speculation bred fear. Each member now understood the stakes. The object or force they were encountering was not only unknown, it was dangerous. And it was testing them. in ways they could not yet comprehend. Every small success in analysis or navigation was overshadowed by loss. Instruments continued to provide valuable data, revealing strange geometries, energy readings, and patterns of the object. The crew documented everything meticulously, aware that even if they did not survive, their work could offer future explorers guidance. Yet every success came with a stark reminder that they were vulnerable. They were not in control, and the universe they had entered had rules they could not predict. Sleep deprivation, isolation, and stress began to impact physical health. Crew members suffered from headaches, fatigue, and moments of dizziness. Coordination became more difficult, and judgment sometimes faltered. Even minor errors became critical. The engineers worked tirelessly to keep the shuttle functional, while the pilots remained hyper-alert, ready to react to the slightest anomaly. The scientists struggled to continue analysis while managing their own fear and uncertainty. Survival demanded not just skill, but constant vigilance. One evening, as the shuttle drifted near a region where energy readings were strongest, another disappearance occurred. This time, it was almost silent. A crew member simply walked into the corridor and was gone. The remaining crew was left staring at empty hallways, instruments that had not detected movement, and the chilling realization that nothing in their training could prepare them for this. Fear turned to dread. Every sound, every light, every vibration became a potential threat. Despite the terror, the crew continued. They had come too far to retreat without answers. Each member pushed beyond personal limits, driven by a mix of duty, curiosity, and the human desire to survive and understand. Every observation was recorded, every anomaly documented, and every decision debated carefully. The knowledge that they might be the last witnesses to something extraordinary gave purpose even in the midst of despair. The psychological effects were profound. Crew members began speaking less, moving cautiously, and second-guessing every instinct. The shuttle, once a home and a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. The object outside, the pulses, the patterns, and the disappearances all combined to create an environment that challenged not only human skill, but human sanity. Yet the crew relied on each other, forming a fragile network of trust and communication that kept them functioning. In quieter moments, the crew reflected on what they had seen and endured. Each disappearance was a reminder of mortality, a demonstration of forces beyond human control, and a challenge to human understanding. Conversations turned philosophical, as some wondered whether the object represented life, intelligence, or something entirely different. Others focused on survival, hoping that careful observation, caution, and teamwork would carry them through the ordeal. Despite all the fear and loss, the crew continued their mission. They mapped areas near the object, analyzed energy pulses, and documented the patterns of lights and movements. Each day brought new challenges, new questions, and new horrors, but also moments of awe and understanding. They were living through an experience that no human had ever faced, and even in the face of fear, they pressed on. Curiosity, determination, and a sense of responsibility pushed them forward, sustaining them as much as the ship's systems or supplies. As part 4 of their journey drew on, it became clear that the mission was no longer just exploration, it was survival. Every decision mattered. Every observation could mean life or death. The disappearances had changed the crew irrevocably, shaping their thoughts, actions, and relationships. Yet, amid the fear and loss, there remained a spark of human courage. They would face whatever came next together, documenting, analyzing, and years had passed since the shuttle had vanished into the Sol system, and the world below had not forgotten. Governments and space agencies had scoured every available source of information: satellite imagery, telescope readings, and fragments of the last transmissions, but the truth remained elusive. The final messages from the crew were garbled, chaotic, and terrifying, giving glimpses of strange phenomena and fear, but offering no clear explanation of what had happened. The public, scientists, and officials were left to wonder. Had humanity lost its bravest explorers, or had they encountered something beyond understanding? On Earth, the impact of their disappearance was profound. Families mourned, entire communities held vigils, and the global conversation turned to the unknown. People speculated endlessly. Some claimed that the crew had discovered alien life, perhaps hostile or indifferent. Others theorized about natural cosmic anomalies that could consume a ship without leaving a trace. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, and yet, among the chaos, there was also admiration for the courage of those who had ventured where no one else dared. The crew had become symbols of humanity's ambition and curiosity, reminders of how far people were willing to go in pursuit of knowledge. Scientists worked tirelessly to piece together every detail from the shuttle's last automated data logs. Instruments had continued recording even as communications failed, capturing fragments of energy readings, gravitational anomalies, and mysterious signals. The data suggested that the object they had encountered was unlike anything humanity had ever known, an intelligent presence or phenomenon that could manipulate energy, gravity, and space itself. The implications were staggering, yet frustratingly incomplete. Every answer raised new questions, leaving Earth's experts with more mysteries than solutions. Some researchers began to notice patterns in the fragmented data. Energy pulses, lights, and anomalies suggested that the object might have been observing the crew, perhaps even testing them. Was it aware of their intentions? Did it react to human presence? Or was it following a logic that could not be understood? These questions fueled debate, research, and imagination. Some of the world's best minds argued endlessly, attempting to decode the signals, to find meaning, and to understand what had become of the lost crew. Public fascination remained high. Documentaries, news articles, and discussions speculated about the fate of the explorers. Schools taught lessons about the mission, blending science with the mystery of space. Children looked up at the stars, dreaming of following in the footsteps of those who had dared to go further than anyone else. For many, the unknown object became a symbol both terrifying and inspiring of what humanity had yet to discover. Years after the disappearances, small breakthroughs began to emerge. Some signals from the region near the object were detected faintly, though they could not be fully interpreted. Tiny fragments of data suggested structures or energy patterns that hinted at advanced intelligence. No clear message had been received, but even the smallest trace was enough to rekindle hope. Humanity had not entirely lost contact. There were echoes of the crew's journey waiting to be understood. The story of the crew became part of a larger narrative about humanity's ambition. Plans for further exploration continued, though with increased caution. New ships were designed with advanced shields, redundant communication systems, and enhanced safety protocols. The tragedy of the lost crew became a lesson in both courage and humility, teaching that exploration comes with risk and that the universe holds mysteries far beyond human comprehension. The surviving data and research inspired generations. Scientists, engineers, and explorers looked to the stars with renewed determination. They studied the object indirectly, sending probes, analyzing energy signatures, and developing theories about what could exist in the regions beyond the known planets. The mission, though it had failed in its immediate goals, succeeded in another way. It pushed humanity to think bigger, to reach farther, and to respect the vastness and complexity of space in quiet moments. Those who had worked on the mission reflected on the human cost. Lives were lost, families were changed forever, and the crew's sacrifice was remembered. Memorials were erected, and stories were told, emphasizing the courage and dedication of individuals who faced the unknown with bravery. Yet there was also a sense of awe and acknowledgement that the universe had shown humanity something it could not yet fully comprehend, and that the lost crew had been at the forefront of that revelation. Years became decades, and the mission's legacy grew. The object, still unobserved directly, remained a puzzle, a silent guardian of secrets humanity was not yet ready to understand. Space agencies debated sending another crew, but caution prevailed. Technology had advanced, but the memory of the lost explorers reminded everyone that some mysteries demanded patience, preparation, and humility. Humanity continued to observe, study, and theorize, knowing that the solar system had changed forever in the wake of that mission. The fascination was not limited to scientists. Artists, writers, and dreamers imagined the story of the crew in countless ways. Novels, paintings, and digital art depicted the explorers as heroes facing a silent, unknowable intelligence. Music and films captured the tension, wonder, and fear of venturing into the vast unknown. The mission became part of global culture, inspiring awe, curiosity, and the timeless human desire to explore. Despite the unanswered questions, humanity did not stop reaching for the stars. The lost crew had shown that curiosity and courage could push the boundaries of what was possible. Each probe, each satellite, each new mission carried with it the memory of those who had vanished, serving as both a warning and a beacon. The world had learned that space was beautiful, dangerous, and full of mysteries, and that every step into the unknown required bravery, skill, and respect for the unimaginable. In the end, the mission's greatest impact was not in the discoveries made, but in the questions it left behind. What had the crew encountered? What was the true nature of the object? Could humanity ever communicate with it, or even survive in its presence? These questions drove exploration, inspired imagination, and reminded the world of the fragility and resilience of human life. The lost crew had become more than explorers. They had become symbols of the human spirit, proof that even in the face of the incomprehensible, people could act with courage, curiosity, and unity. The story closed not with answers, but with possibility. Humanity had been tested, challenged, and inspired by what lay beyond the known planets. The solar system, once familiar, had become a place of mystery, danger, and potential revelation. The legacy of the crew endured in the hearts and minds of those who looked to the stars, dreaming of one day understanding what they could not, and reaching for the unknown with the same bravery that had carried the first explorers into the depths of space. Even decades later, the faint signals continued to reach Earth. Scientists studied them with the same wonder and frustration as the first day, piecing together fragments of data that hinted at the crew's journey and the enigmatic presence they had encountered. Every pulse, every fluctuation, every pattern was analyzed with meticulous care. The mystery remained, but it inspired hope. Humanity had learned to accept that some truths are revealed slowly, that discovery is a journey, and that even in loss, there is purpose. The universe had shown its vastness, its beauty, and its danger. The lost crew had faced it with courage, leaving behind a story of wonder, fear, and resilience. And though no one would ever fully know what had happened to them, their journey continued to shape humanity's understanding of the stars, pushing generations to reach farther, dream bigger, and embrace the unknown with the same spirit of curiosity and bravery. In quiet observatories and bustling control rooms, people still looked toward the solar system with reverence. They remembered the crew, the mission, and the silent object that had challenged humanity to see beyond itself. Every breakthrough, every probe sent into space, every new signal detected was a continuation of that legacy. The story was not finished. It had become part of the human journey, an eternal reminder that exploration carries risk, wonder, and the enduring hope of discovery. And so, the tale of the lost crew came to rest not in answers, but in memory and inspiration. They had entered the unknown and faced what no one else could. The soul system had tested them, claimed them, and left humanity with questions, lessons, and dreams. Their courage became a guiding light for all who dared to look beyond, and their story, though incomplete, would never be forgotten. Humanity's journey continued, shaped by the legacy of those who had ventured further than anyone else into the vast, mysterious heart of the soul system.